Ryan's office revenge.
Legacy processes are killing our competitive edge, Jordan Walsh announced, pointing straight at me during Tuesday's production meeting. We need Industry 4.0 thinking, not outdated methodologies. The conference room went dead quiet. 23 people suddenly became very interested in their coffee cups. At 54, I was the oldest guy there by almost 20 years. I kept my hands steady on the table and smiled. Interesting perspective. My name's Scott Reynolds, and I've been building manufacturing systems longer than most of these folks have been alive. That morning changed everything, though none of them knew it yet. The silence hung there like a bad smell while 28 years of dedicated work got dismissed with a wave of Jordan's hand. I gathered my engineering reports, keeping my back straight, something my old man taught me in his machine shop. A few of the younger engineers shot me looks that said, "Sorry, man," as I walked out. But sorry doesn't pay the bills or fix broken systems. That evening, I sat in my garage workshop, tinkering with an old carburetor from my '87 Chevy. The familiar smell of motor oil and metal shavings always helped me think. My phone buzzed with messages from concerned coworkers, but I wasn't ready to respond. Not until I figured out exactly how to handle this situation. Because Jordan had no clue who he was really dealing with. In 3 days, at the quarterly board review, he'd discover that the legacy thinker he'd just dismissed actually owned 31% of the entire company. Let me back up and tell you how I got here. I joined Pinnacle Manufacturing straight out of engineering school when it was just 12 people working in a converted airplane hangar. The founder, Howard Brenner, was brilliant with innovation, but hopeless with production efficiency. We met during my interview when he was trying to figure out why their main assembly line kept jamming every 30 minutes. "If you can make this thing run smooth for a week," he said, wiping grease off his hands with a shop rag, "I'll hire you regardless of what your GPA was." I rolled up my sleeves and crawled under the conveyor system. 20 minutes later, I emerged with the problem. "Your timing belt's stretched and the sensor calibration's off by 2.3 seconds, I explained. "Simple fix, but it compounds over every cycle." He stared at me like I'd just solved world hunger. "Apply that kind of thinking to our entire production system, and you'll save this company." 4 months later, I did exactly that. Working nights and weekends, fueled by coffee and determination, I developed a predictive maintenance system that transformed our struggling startup into what would become the industry leader in industrial equipment manufacturing. The system wasn't just software, it was a complete approach to understanding machine behavior, predicting failures before they happened, and optimizing maintenance schedules to maximize uptime. When the company finally stabilized after nearly going under twice, Howard offered me a partnership position. "You could run this whole operation," he said during one of our late-night strategy sessions. "I'm not interested in managing people," I told him. "I want to build systems that work better than anyone expects them to." He respected that, but insisted I take substantial equity instead. "You saved us, Scott. This ensures you'll always have a voice here no matter how big we get." For 28 years, that promise held true. The company grew from that cramped hangar to a 300-employee operation with facilities across 3 states. I watched fresh-faced engineers become department heads, saw production lines I'd designed handle millions of units, and took quiet pride in building something that lasted. Until Jordan Walsh showed up 6 months ago. Jordan was 33, had an MBA from Wharton, and carried himself like he owned the place. The board brought him in as operations director to modernize our approach to manufacturing efficiency. His first day, he spent 20 minutes studying our production floor layout, then started making notes about optimization opportunities. Within weeks, he'd rearranged the production floor to separate experienced workers from newer hires, claiming it would accelerate knowledge transfer through peer learning. He implemented agile manufacturing sprints that favored speed over precision and started systematically pushing out anyone over 45 through what he called natural workforce evolution. "Manufacturing moves too fast for traditional thinking," he announced at his first all-hands meeting, standing in front of a PowerPoint slide that said, "Digital transformation equals competitive advantage." We need people who understand digital-first processes and can adapt quickly to changing paradigms. I sat in the back, listening to him talk about legacy limitations and modernization imperatives. Around me, guys who'd been running these machines for 15 years shifted uncomfortably in their seats. These weren't just employees, they were craftsmen who understood the subtle differences between normal operation sounds and the early warning signs of trouble. But Jordan saw them as obstacles to his vision. Over the next few weeks, I watched quietly as seasoned machinists got forced out through impossible quotas, exclusion from planning meetings, and public criticism of their old-school methods. Each departure was explained as natural evolution or failure to adapt to modern processes. The HR department, recently staffed with Jordan's former business school contacts, rubber-stamped every termination with phrases like cultural fit and technological alignment. My main project, a predictive maintenance algorithm I'd been refining for 15 years, suddenly became a target for modernization. Jordan called it legacy code with outdated architecture and reassigned it to Ashley Rivera, a recent engineering graduate with impressive credentials but zero manufacturing floor experience. When I offered my documentation to help with the transition, Jordan cut me off mid-sentence. "We're looking for fresh approaches," he said, steering Ashley away from my desk. "Don't worry about Scott's notes. Innovation comes from starting with a clean slate." That night, I started keeping detailed records of every interaction, every dismissal, every slight. Not for a lawsuit. I had something bigger in mind, something that would change more than just my situation. The following week, Jordan restructured the production floor again. My workstation got moved from the main assembly area where I'd sat for 15 years to a corner near the maintenance supply room, away from my team. The official reason was space optimization for collaborative workflows, but everyone knew what it really meant. "Sorry about this, Scott," said Mike Rodriguez, one of the facilities guys helping move my equipment. He'd been with the company almost as long as me. "This doesn't feel right." "It's just a desk, Mike," I replied, though we both knew it was more than that. Position on the floor meant everything in manufacturing. It showed who was essential to operations and who wasn't. My system access got restricted to view only status on most projects. In our shared project management platform, my comments went unread, my suggestions ignored. When I tried to contribute to discussions about equipment maintenance schedules, literally my area of expertise, I'd get responses like, "Thanks for the input," "We'll consider legacy perspectives," or simply silence. During my quarterly performance review, Jordan sat across from me in the sterile conference room, consulting his laptop more than making eye contact. "Nothing personal, Scott," he assured me, scrolling through what looked like a pre-written evaluation. "We're shifting focus toward engineers who understand modern manufacturing paradigms. Your historical knowledge has value, but we need people who can adapt to rapid technological change." I nodded calmly. I understand completely. What I understood was that Jordan had no idea what he was talking about. Modern manufacturing wasn't about throwing out everything that came before. It was about building on proven foundations with new tools. But I wasn't going to waste time arguing with someone who'd never spent a day troubleshooting a production line at 2 a.m. At home that evening, I continued working on my predictive maintenance system independently. The garage had become my real office, workbenches covered with printouts, whiteboards filled with algorithms, and my old computer running simulations that would make Jordan's modern approaches look like kindergarten finger painting. The core of the system wasn't just software. It was 15 years of understanding how machines actually behave under real-world conditions. Every sensor reading, every maintenance log, every failure pattern had been fed into algorithms that could predict equipment problems weeks before they happened. While Jordan's team focused on flashy dashboards and real-time monitoring, my system was preventing failures that would have cost millions. I'd developed the original framework during my own time, using data from multiple companies and research I'd conducted independently. The documentation proving ownership filled 3 filing cabinets in my home office. What the company didn't know was that this system could prevent equipment failures currently costing us $8.5 million annually while boosting overall efficiency by 22%. 3 days after Jordan called me a legacy thinker, I prepared for the quarterly board review. Instead of my usual work clothes, khakis, and a polo shirt, I put on the navy suit I'd bought for my daughter's wedding but rarely wore. Sarah had helped me pick it out, insisting I needed something that showed people you're successful, Dad. When I arrived at the conference room, conversations paused as colleagues did double takes. Even the security guard at the front desk commented. "Looking sharp today, Mr. Reynolds," Jimmy said, with a grin. "Big meeting?" "You could say that," I replied. Ashley Rivera approached first, looking nervous about something. She'd been struggling with my reassigned project for weeks, and it showed. "Scott, you look really professional today. I was wondering, do you have a few minutes to talk about the maintenance system? I'm having trouble with some of the foundational architecture." "Of course," I said. "Though I thought Jordan wanted you to start fresh." She glanced around to make sure he wasn't within earshot. "The fresh start isn't working. The underlying problems are more complex than I realized. Some of the equipment behaviors don't match any textbook patterns." I almost smiled. Equipment didn't read textbooks. "We can talk after the meeting." Across the room, Jordan was holding court with board members, gesturing enthusiastically about his vision for the company's digital future. He wore his confidence like an expensive suit, talking about disrupting traditional paradigms and leveraging emerging technologies for competitive advantage. He hadn't noticed my arrival yet, too busy impressing the new board members with stories of workforce modernization and efficiency improvements. If he'd looked at the actual numbers instead of his PowerPoint presentations, he might have realized that productivity had actually decreased since his changes began. Howard Brenner spotted me from across the room and walked over, extending his weathered hand. Though pushing 75 now, he still had the energy that built this company from nothing. His handshake was firm as ever. "There he is," he announced loud enough for others to hear. "My ace in the hole all these years." Jordan glanced over, his expression shifting from confusion to professional interest when he saw me talking with the founder. I could see him trying to calculate why I was dressed differently, why Howard seemed so pleased to see me. Howard took my arm. "Come say hello to everyone. Most of these new board members haven't met the person who built our production foundation." As we approached Jordan's group, Howard raised his voice slightly. "Everyone here knows Scott, of course, without whom none of us would be standing here today." Jordan's expression remained pleasant but puzzled. "Scott and I have collaborated on several initiatives," he said smoothly, though we'd done nothing of the sort since he'd started freezing me out. "Excellent," Howard beamed, oblivious to the tension. "Then you know you're working with the person who saved this company and still owns 31% of it." The reaction was immediate and satisfying. Jordan's coffee mug tilted, liquid splashing onto his sleeve. His face went pale as the pieces clicked together. The legacy thinker he'd been systematically pushing out wasn't just some old engineer refusing to retire. He was one of the company's largest shareholders. 31%? Jordan repeated, dabbing his shirt with a napkin while trying to maintain his composure. Scott could have been CEO. "If he wanted," Howard continued cheerfully, still unaware of the bombshell he'd just dropped. "Instead, he keeps building brilliant systems. Speaking of which, how's that predictive maintenance project coming along? The board's eager for an update." Before Jordan could answer, I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Actually, Howard, I've been developing some new approaches I'd like to share with everyone. Perhaps we could discuss it during today's review." Howard clapped his hands together. "Perfect. Jordan, make sure that's first on the agenda." The meeting was scheduled to start in an hour. I excused myself to prepare my presentation, leaving Jordan to explain to the board members why he hadn't mentioned that the engineer he'd been marginalizing was actually a major owner. I could hear fragments of awkward conversation as I walked away. In the empty conference room next door, I connected my laptop and loaded the presentation I'd been working on for months, not just slides about technical specifications, but a comprehensive business case that would change everything. The meeting started exactly at 2 p.m. I sat near the back as board members filed in, watching Jordan try to maintain his usual confidence while stealing glances at me. He'd clearly spent the past hour trying to figure out damage control, but there's no preparing for what was about to happen. Howard called the meeting to order and looked directly at me. "Scott has something important to share that could transform our operations. Everyone give him your full attention." I connected my laptop to the projector and stood before a room full of executives. Some I'd known for decades, others hired under Jordan's new regime. The younger faces looked curious, while the veterans seemed to sense something significant was coming. "For the past 15 years, I've been developing a predictive maintenance system that will revolutionize how we operate," I began, clicking to my first slide. "It prevents equipment failures, optimizes maintenance schedules, and reduces downtime while cutting costs significantly." The presentation walked through real data from beta testing I'd conducted using historical company records. Failure predictions with 94% accuracy. Maintenance scheduling that reduced emergency repairs by 73%. Cost savings that would make the CFO's year. This system identified 47 potential equipment failures over the past 6 months, I explained, showing a detailed analysis chart. If implemented, we could have prevented $2.1 million in emergency repairs and 340 hours of unplanned downtime. The room's energy shifted as executives leaned forward, recognizing the potential impact. Jordan sat rigidly, realizing that the legacy thinking he'd dismissed could save the company millions. "This looks remarkable," the CFO commented, studying the projected numbers. "When can we implement it company-wide?" "That's what I want to discuss," I replied, meeting Jordan's gaze directly. "This system isn't company property. I developed the core algorithms during my own time using independent research and data from multiple sources. I have extensive documentation proving ownership." Confusion rippled through the room. Several board members exchanged glances, clearly not understanding the implications. Jordan's expression had moved from rigid to increasingly uncomfortable. "I'm offering to license this system to the company," I continued. "Not give it. The annual savings will exceed $8.5 million based on conservative projections, with additional benefits including improved safety metrics and reduced insurance costs." "Name your price," the CFO said immediately, pulling out his phone to start calculating numbers. "My terms aren't financial," I replied, advancing to my next slide. "I want implementation oversight by a new workforce development committee with real authority over hiring and retention practices. I want mandatory respect and collaboration training for all employees, especially management. And I want a mentorship program pairing experienced workers with new hires, ensuring knowledge flows both directions." The boardroom erupted in murmurs. Howard smiled knowingly, but several of the newer executives looked bewildered. "Scott isn't asking for money," Howard translated for them. "He's asking for cultural change." "This seems highly irregular," Jordan interjected, his voice carefully controlled. "Creating new organizational structures based on personal grievances appears to set a concerning precedent." "Are there personal grievances?" Howard interrupted, his tone still pleasant, but eyes sharp. "Because if there are issues with how we're treating employees, the board needs to know about them." The room fell silent as everyone turned to Jordan. I could see him calculating his response, trying to find a way to explain his behavior without admitting to systematic discrimination. "I think what Jordan means," I said carefully, giving him an escape route, "is that every organization must evolve. Sometimes that means embracing new methods. Other times it means preserving institutional knowledge. The best companies do both." I clicked to my final slide. A detailed implementation plan that included Jordan as executive sponsor reporting to the Workforce Development Committee. It was strategic positioning that would either force him to support the changes or publicly oppose them. "This gives everyone what they need," I explained. "The company gets a revolutionary system that will save millions annually. Newer employees gain wisdom from experienced mentors who've seen every possible problem. Seasoned workers contribute meaningfully while learning emerging techniques. And our management team demonstrates true leadership by building bridges instead of divisions." I paused, letting the proposal sink in. "We're not just talking about a maintenance system here. We're talking about creating a workplace where experience and innovation work together instead of being viewed as enemies." The CFO was frantically taking notes. "The cost savings alone justify this approach, but the retention benefits could be even more significant. Replacing an experienced engineer costs us approximately $180,000 in recruitment, training, and lost productivity." Howard studied the room, gauging reactions. "I believe we need time to discuss this proposal." "Of course," I replied, gathering my materials. "I'll wait outside." The hallway felt unusually quiet as I sat on the same bench where I'd waited for promotion decisions and project approvals over the years. This time was different, though. This time I wasn't asking for permission. I was offering a solution while holding all the leverage. Through the conference room's frosted glass, I could see animated discussions. 34 minutes passed before the door opened. Howard emerged first, his expression carefully neutral. "We'd like you back in." Inside, the atmosphere had shifted completely. The executives had repositioned themselves around the table. Jordan now sat at the far end, his posture stiff but no longer hostile. A yellow legal pad in front of him was covered with notes. "We've discussed your proposal extensively," the CFO began. "While unconventional, we recognize tremendous value in both your maintenance system and your suggested structural changes. For the next hour, we negotiated details. They accepted the Workforce Development Committee but requested equal representation across age groups. They embraced the mentorship program but wanted measurable success metrics. They agreed to respect and collaboration training but expanded it to include all forms of workplace diversity. Throughout the discussion, Jordan remained mostly silent, taking notes but offering no objections. I could see him processing the new reality, that his approach had not only been wrong, but potentially illegal. "There's one more thing," I said as we neared agreement. I turned toward Jordan. "I want Mr. Walsh to chair the implementation team, reporting directly to the Workforce Development Committee." The request sent another wave of murmurs through the room. I was essentially asking the man who'd tried to push me out to report to the very people he'd marginalized. Jordan looked up from his notepad, his expression unreadable. "May I ask why?" "Because you excel at driving change," I replied honestly. "Your ability to transform systems is exactly what we need, just applied with broader perspective and genuine respect for all employees." He studied me for a long moment, searching for sarcasm or hidden revenge. Finding none, he nodded slowly. "I accept." 2 days later, the Workforce Development Committee held its first meeting. 5 members, myself, Jordan, Ashley, representing newer employees, Howard for the board, and Rachel Torres from HR. Our charter, posted prominently on the company intranet, outlined our mission to create a workplace that valued both innovation and experience. The first order of business was addressing the systematic exclusion of older workers. We reviewed terminations from the past 6 months, identifying clear patterns of age discrimination, and developed a remediation plan that would have made any employment lawyer proud. "We should offer reinstatement to those wrongfully terminated," Ashley suggested during our second meeting, surprising everyone with her directness. "With back pay and full benefits restoration." I added, plus public acknowledgement that their departures weren't performance-related. Jordan, who had remained mostly quiet during our initial discussions, cleared his throat. "That could create significant financial liability, less than the lawsuit brewing among former employees," I countered. "Besides, my predictive maintenance system will more than offset those costs within the first quarter." He nodded, conceding the point. Valid analysis. Over the following weeks, I watched Jordan navigate his new role with surprising adaptability. Initially defensive in committee meetings, he gradually began engaging substantively with our initiatives. The man who'd dismissed legacy thinking started researching the business case for age-diverse teams. During one particularly productive session, he presented findings that would have shocked his earlier self. Studies consistently show that mixed-age teams outperform homogeneous groups in problem-solving and innovation, he explained, projecting data charts on the conference room wall. They bring complementary skills. Experienced workers provide institutional knowledge and risk assessment, while younger employees offer fresh perspectives and technological fluency. "Interesting," I commented. "What changed your mind about outdated methodologies?" The room tensed at my direct reference to his earlier insult. Jordan met my gaze without flinching. "Data," he replied simply. "I was operating on assumptions instead of evidence. That was unprofessional and counterproductive. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was honest acknowledgement. Progress comes in small steps." The mentorship program launched next, pairing experienced workers with newer team members. The structure ensured knowledge flowed both directions. Veterans shared institutional wisdom, while younger workers offered technological insights and energy. Ashley and I formed one of the first official partnerships. During our weekly sessions, she brought challenges from the maintenance system implementation, while I shared practical insights that textbooks never covered. "I've been struggling with the sensor calibration protocols," she admitted during one meeting. "The theoretical models don't match what's happening on the production floor." "Show me the variance patterns," I said, pulling up her data. For the next hour, we worked through real-world applications together. I explained why certain equipment behaved differently under varying load conditions, while she suggested algorithmic improvements that could adapt to those variations automatically. "This collaborative approach actually works," she said, sounding genuinely surprised. "You expected it wouldn't? Honestly? I thought experienced workers would resist new ideas, and younger employees would dismiss institutional knowledge as outdated." "Some do," I acknowledged. "But most people want to do good work. Give them the right framework, and they'll surprise you." She nodded thoughtfully. "Jordan mentioned that you could have had him fired. Why didn't you?" "Because firing him wouldn't have changed anything fundamental. Someone else with similar attitudes would have taken his place. Real change requires transformation, not elimination. 6 months after being called a legacy thinker, I stood before the entire company at our semi-annual review meeting. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation as I prepared to present our transformation results. When we began this journey, many viewed it as correcting past mistakes. Others saw it as unnecessary disruption. Today I'm sharing numbers that speak for themselves. The screen behind me displayed our performance metrics. Productivity up 22%, employee satisfaction increased by 24%, turnover reduced by 31%, equipment failures down 67%, saving $8.7 million annually. These results weren't achieved by favoring one demographic over another, I continued. They came from recognizing that experience and innovation both create value, that institutional knowledge and fresh approaches can coexist. That respect isn't just morally right, it's profitable. From the front row, I could see Jordan nodding along. Beside him sat Ashley, recently promoted to senior engineer while continuing her mentorship responsibilities. Howard watched from the back, his expression proud but unsurprised. The applause was gratifying, but the real reward came afterward when employees across all age groups shared stories of improved collaboration and job satisfaction. Later that afternoon, Jordan knocked on my office door. He entered carrying a folder, looking more confident than I'd seen him since our initial confrontation. "I wanted to discuss something," he began, sitting across from my desk. "Go ahead. I've been offered a position with another company. Better title, higher salary, significant equity package." "Congratulations," I said, genuinely meaning it. "Sounds like a major opportunity." "It would be," he agreed, "but they specifically want me for my aggressive modernization approach." They mentioned admiring how I'd refreshed the workforce here before recent changes. Understanding dawned immediately. They want the old Jordan Walsh, exactly, and that version of me no longer exists. He closed the folder without opening it. I've learned more about leadership and collaboration in these past months than in my entire previous career. I'd rather build on that growth than return to destructive patterns, even for significant financial gain. The irony was perfect. The man dismissed experienced workers as outdated now viewed his former self the same way. 1 year after that first confrontation, I found myself back in my garage workshop on a quiet Saturday morning. The space looked different now. Some old tools still occupied their familiar places, but newer equipment sat alongside them, a metaphor for everything that had happened. My phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. "Maintenance system prevented another major failure today. Saved estimated $340,000. Thanks for teaching me to listen to the machines." I smiled, setting the phone aside and returning to the carburetor I was rebuilding, not because it needed it, but because I enjoyed the process of taking something worn and making it work better than before. Sometimes the most powerful response to disrespect isn't retaliation, but transformation. Not destroying your opponent, but converting them into an ally. Not winning a single battle, but changing the entire landscape of how people work together. In the end, that's what real success looks like. Building something that works better than anyone expected it to, and lasts long after you're gone. The greatest revenge isn't proving you were right. It's creating a system where being wrong becomes impossible, and your former enemies become the guardians of the values they once attacked. True power isn't about holding leverage over people. It's about using that leverage to build something bigger than yourself, something that makes everyone stronger, including those who tried to tear you down.